All right, good afternoon, explorers, and welcome back to another episode of the Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Ty, and I'm coming to you live from the Aquarium Pacific here in Long Beach, California. But I'm also not alone today in the studio. I have my friend Tina here, who's going to be working all the magic that you see behind me. And we would also love if you would join us live during our program today. Because one of the cool things about our exploration today is that you can use this number down below, 562-286-1838. And that way you can actually text us any of your observations, any questions you have, or just share any of your ideas, things that pop into your mind as we explore today. If you're watching this after we are live, you can also use that email down below, live@lbaop.org. You're also welcome to use that format if it's easier for you live as well. All right, my friends. So what we're going to do today is we are going to explore all about sharks. We're going to be shark scientists today. Now, when I say we're going to be shark scientists, well, the first part, we're going to look at a bunch of sharks today. But the scientist part, you are going to be a scientist with me today. Because being a scientist, all that means is that we're going to ask some questions. We're going to be really curious about the world around us, in this case, our different sharks. And then we're also going to make some observations. That means that we're going to use our senses to explore the world. Now, since we're doing this virtually, of course, our main sense is going to be our eyes today. So we're going to see what things you notice, and then scientists also need to share information. We learn from each other. And so you are welcome to share what you are noticing with us by using the number or email there. Or if you're watching along with somebody, feel free to just talk with them as we explore together today. All right, my friends. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, today is all about sharks. But we're also going to highlight another animal that has a lot in common with the sharks that we may see here in our exhibit behind me. And we're going to get our brains warmed up by making some observations about this exhibit. So I'm going to step off the screen here. This exhibit is called Shark Lagoon. Now, this is a live feed from our exhibit that's right outside. So if I was to leave our studio, walk outdoors, take a look into the big shark pool, this is exactly what I would see. And so something that's really cool is that you can actually check up on this exhibit 24/7 by going to our website and looking for the Shark Lagoon webcam. So what we're going to do is just take a few minutes, a few seconds even, just to make some observations. Now again, this is just looking for things that you notice, things that stand out to you. It could be things such as what animals you see. It could be what the animals are doing. But it also could be things as simple as shapes or colors that you might find. Now, when we're going to be exploring today, one of the things to note for this exhibit here is that this is just one type of ocean habitat. Have you ever heard that word before? Habitat? Habitat is just the home for the animals. Now, on land, we have many different kinds of habitats. We have the rainforest and the desert and the snowy Arctic, and even like our cities are different habitats too. Now, underwater, we have different habitats as well. And something that's really cool about sharks is that they're found in just about every single type of habitat. So behind me is just one type. Can you tell which kind of habitat this is? Maybe you've seen a habitat like this before. Now, to know what this is called, take a look here towards the middle. See all this stuff, all these different colors here? I'm noticing some green, some yellow, some reds, even more colors. But I wonder what those are. Well, these things are corals. Now, corals are animals too, even though they just kind of look like plants that are kind of growing here on these rocks. So corals are living animals, but when you have a bunch of corals together, they make what's called a coral reef. Now, coral reefs are really important because corals can be food for animals, but really they're a place to hide. And so you'll find lots of fish that live around these coral reefs. And if you have lots of fish, well then, you might find lots of sharks too, because that means there's lots of food for them. So coral reefs are one of the places that you can find sharks. Let's see if we can find any sharks here in our exhibit. So let me step off again. Let's see who we can find, who's out and about swimming around this afternoon. Well, let's see, because it looks like they're a little bit camera shy. Here comes one of them down here. We'll take a closer look at that shark in just a second. And it looks like over there, one just passed by. Now, it also might not look like it, but this is actually a shark right here, sticking out down behind those corals, and it's kind of just laying there. We'll explore that lazy little shark in just a minute too. But what are some things that you notice about what are the sharks doing? Hmm, let's see. This one looks like he's coming up to say hello. Now, what we're going to do first together is we're going to talk about what makes a shark shark. Because as we're looking here, right, as we just saw our friend swim by, you knew that was a shark, right? You've seen them before, you recognize them. But we're going to dive a little deeper, figure out, well, how do we know a shark is a shark? And so to do that, we're going to build one together by drawing it. So I'm going to go over to my camera. Now, what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to draw a shark. If you would like to draw along with me, all you need to do is get a paper and something to draw with. It could be anything you have, crayons, colored pencils, markers. I'm just going to use a whiteboard with a marker today. But if you would like to draw along, feel free. But if you would rather just watch and use this drawing time to learn about the sharks, we can do that too. So now if you want to gather your things, go ahead. But I'm going to have Tina put up a picture of a shark now so we can sort of pause because we saw them swimming all around in our exhibit. But let's take a look at just one shark in a picture. Okay. Now, in order to build our shark, to add on these different pieces of what makes a shark, well, we're going to need to start with the body, of course, right? So what I want you to do is just look at the main body of the shark. What kind of shape do you see? Well, if you're noticing some triangles because of this and this, we'll get to those next. Ignore those triangles for a minute and just look at the main body. How might you describe that shape? Well, let's go over to our drawing board and we'll draw it out and talk a little bit about that shape. So for me, the way I like to think of that shape is it's almost like an oval, but then you pinch the ends of it. So it's rounded like that. And then the other side, sort of like that. Now, of course, there are many different types of sharks. There's over 500 kinds that we know of. So there's going to be lots of different kinds. And so not all of them will have the same exact shape, but most of them will usually have some form of this sort of pointy oval shape. Now, this shape actually has a name, and that name is called fusiform. Now, that is probably a new word, and it's a big sciencey word to just describe that shape, fusiform. Now, why might all these sharks, or most sharks, share this body shape? I wonder how that helps them to survive out in the ocean. How does having a shape like that help them out? Well, to help us think about how that shape will help them, does the shape remind you of maybe a ball that you might play with when you go outside? Does the shape remind you of any? Now, if you were thinking of something like a football, that's exactly right. So this fusiform shape is also the shape that a football has. Now, when you go outside and you throw it really hard, it's great at flying through the air. That's how it's able to go so far. Now, sharks having this body in the water means that they're able to swim really good through the water because the shape sort of helps them cut right through, right? Just like a football cuts through the air. So, football shape for our shark's body. But let's go ahead and go back to the picture because we're definitely missing some things that we need to add on, right? Now, we know what the body shape is, but earlier when I asked you to look for different shapes, you may have noticed some of those triangles, right? What could those triangles be? Do you know what they're called? Those are the fins. So the fins of the shark, I wonder what those are going to help them do. Well, first, why don't we see how many fins we have? Let's count them together. Let's start with this one up here. We have 1, 2, 3, the tail, 4, 5, there is 6 over there on the other side, and then 7 and 8. That is a lot of fins. So let's take a closer look and see if we can figure out what these fins do. I'll have my friend Tina pull up a video perhaps of some sharks moving around again, and we'll see if we can figure out what these different fins are doing. All right, this is a great video of some sharks swimming out in the ocean. Now, which one of those fins is helping the shark to move forward? Can Can you tell which one is giving the shark its power? Well, if I bring up my friend Sharky here, right, let's take a look. Does it look like these sharks are using these ones on the side to flap? Do we see that happening? Not quite. What about this part, that tail? Do we see that moving and giving them their power as they're swimming around? Yeah, right? So the tail moving side to side is what's going to give the sharks that power to move forward. So the tail is where sharks are going to get that ability to swim. Now, some sharks are really, really fast, and some are, well, not so quick, like that lazy shark that we saw earlier that we'll come back to. But regardless, that tail is always going to be how they're going to move from side to side. So let's go ahead and add on a tail to our shark. Now, tails for sharks also come in many, many different shapes and sizes. In fact, I think this would actually be a good opportunity to show you a shark that has a huge tail, and then I'll make mine look like that one. So some sharks will have tails sort of like this, right, where it's kind of equally sized. Some have tails that are really, really long, and they kind of go sort of flat out this way. But then the shark that we're going to show you now has an extra long extra long tail. Let's see if Tina can show us a video or picture of this very special shark. All right, so take a look at this video. What do you notice about this shark? Do you see that tail there? So this is my favorite shark in the world. This is called a thresher shark. Now these are so cool because, well, look at just how huge that tail is. It's like longer than its body almost, right? It's huge. So I wonder what a big tail could be used for. Any guesses as to what a giant tail like this, how it could help a shark survive in the ocean? Well, maybe you're thinking it helps it to move fast. And definitely, sometimes having a big, strong tail can help you to move, right? But the thresher shark also uses this tail in a very special way. It can actually use it to stun its prey. Almost, it can whip around its tail to catch little fish as it's hunting. And we'll talk a little bit about how sharks in just a few minutes. But the thresher shark has that special tail that allows it to be really good at catching some fish out in the ocean. So I'm going to make my shark today a thresher shark tail, but feel free to use whatever kind of tail you want because, like I said, there's many, many different kinds. But for a thresher tail, we need to make the top part huge, come on back, and then they still have that bottom part down lower. Thresher shark. Now, we do need to add some more fins. Now, the most famous fin for sharks is usually this one that sits up on top. This fin we call our dorsal fin, and they are going to have two of them. One bigger one on the front and one smaller one behind. So let's take a look at another picture and see if we can look at that dorsal fin up on top. Now, the dorsal part of an animal is sort of like their backside. So for us, if we had a dorsal fin, it would be because we'd be swimming forward. So for sharks, it's going to sit on top of them. That's their dorsal side. So this dorsal fin, although it doesn't really do much, in fact, if we go look at a video again, you're probably going to see that that fin isn't really moving at all. It's just kind of staying up straight like we saw here. But it does have a very important purpose. Think back to the football example we were looking at earlier. When a football flies through the air, if you throw it really good, does it just kind of float through the air? Not quite. A football, when it's thrown really far, it's going to have a spiral. It's going to spin, right? Now, if you're a shark, right, and you're trying to move quickly through the ocean, do you think that a shark is going to want to start spiraling like a football? No, right? That's going to make it pretty hard for the shark to be able to keep its eyes on its prey that it's trying to catch. So instead, these fins help it to stay balanced so that even if they're moving really quickly, they stay nice and stable, balanced as they're moving through the ocean. So that's what those dorsal fins do. Now, we still have some more we need to add on, and that's going to have to do with those sides. One's on the side you can see here in our thresher shark too. So these side fins, or pectoral fins, those are going to act like the steering devices. So if you think of like a plane gliding through the air, When a plane has to turn, it also doesn't start flapping, right? But those wings allow it to take these steady turns like this. And so the sharks having those fins are going to help them to turn as well. But also, just like a plane, those fins give them what we call lift. So just like a plane, when it's time to take off, it speeds up really fast, and then those wings help it so that it can actually get up off of the ground. So sharks will use these too to keep them up in the water column when they're swimming around. So very important fins on the side as well. So let's add those onto our shark. So for those, I'm going to add a side fin right here, pectoral fin, and they do have some smaller ones at the bottom that also help them to balance as they're swimming along. All right, let's see if we can go back to that picture though, because we are still missing some things. Let's see if we can figure out what other pieces of a shark we need to add on. Let's take a look over here on this side. Is there anything that we should add in order to make our shark look more like a shark? Well, we're going to need an eye and a mouth too, right? Our shark won't be able to see or eat without those. So let's add those onto our shark as well. Now, shark eyes can also be quite different. Now, some sharks, like the zebra shark, maybe I'll have Tina find us a picture of a zebra shark. Some sharks that live in really shallow, sunny, bright areas, like those coral reefs we were looking at earlier, sometimes they will have really small eyes like you can see here. But others, in fact, that thresher shark we were looking at earlier, those have quite the opposite. They have really, really big eyes, right? Or like this mako here, this blue, right? So these sharks that live out in the open waters where it gets much darker and deeper, well, those have really big eyes, and that helps them to see better even if it's going to be much darker. So here's a great white with also an example of a pretty big eyeball, right? So give your shark either a big eye or a small eye, depending on what you want to do for yours. I'm going to do a big eye because the thresher sharks have pretty big eyes too. And then we're going to need to give our shark a mouth, because of course our shark is going to need to eat. Now, you're probably noticing that because there are so many different types of sharks, pretty much everything can be different around them too, right? And so we're going to look at some teeth next, because not all sharks are going to have the same teeth as well. All right, we're still missing a couple things. Let's go back to that picture one more time. Now, do you notice anything else up towards the face of our shark that we still need to add? What do you notice? Now, maybe you're spotting these here. I wonder what these are, these little lines. Is it just this shark, or do we think other sharks have it too? Well, let's have Tina show us some other pictures. Can we find these same lines on other sharks too? Now we're back to our friend, the great white. Do we see those here? These ones are even bigger. What about some others? Let's see. Do we see those lines on this shark? Yes, we do, right? So these lines that are on the sides of these sharks, including even tiny sharks, this one, this white tip. Well, these sharks, or all these sharks, are going to have these lines because those are their gills. So gills, any ideas what those gills are going to help a shark do? To breathe, of course. Because they're going to need to pull oxygen from the water, their gills are going to help them do that. So let's make sure our shark can breathe out in the ocean by giving him some gills. Now, sharks usually have 5 of these gills, although there are some special sharks that have extra ones. There's one that has 6, we call that the 6-gill shark, and there's another that has 7, and he guesses what we call that shark? It's the 7-gill. Right? So now we have the basics of a shark. We know what makes a shark a shark. I hope that yours has come out looking really cool. Now what we're going to do is continue looking at some of the differences between these sharks, and one of the ways is by looking at their teeth. All right, so let me move my drawing out the way, and we're going to stay on this camera because I'm going to show you some teeth that I have brought today. And to start, I'm going to need to zoom out. I have brought a big one here. Okay, this huge jaw. Let's take a closer look, right? So what are some things that you notice? I'm going to kind of move it around a little bit so you can see. Now we're looking at the back side. Anything standing out to you so far? Now this jaw is from a blue shark. That's why it says blue there. So blue sharks are sharks that live out in the open ocean. But one of the things that you may be noticing is that, well, one, there's a lot of teeth, right? And if you were to feel them, they're definitely pretty sharp. But these teeth get even more special, but the only way to see it is by zooming in. So let me go ahead and zoom in and see if you notice anything else interesting about this first set of teeth. Anything else standing out to you now that we've zoomed in? Well, maybe you're noticing that along the sides of these teeth, do you see anything there? Look towards the sides. You may notice that there are almost like little bumps or ridges on the sides of these teeth. Now, if you ever see those on teeth, we call those serrated teeth. Now, this actually connects to us. If you ever like to eat something like steak or chicken and maybe we need to break it up into smaller pieces, well, we use a knife to do that, right? But sometimes you'll see knives that have sort of like a serrated edge. So what that means for this shark is that those serrated teeth are going to help it to take bites of things. So if it's going to take bites of things, well, that gives you a hint that it's going to eat bigger things, right? But do we think all sharks are going to eat big things? Oh, let's keep going. Let's investigate. Well, let me show you our next jaw. See what you notice about this one. Make sure I got it focused so we can see it. All right, what are some differences between this jaw and the one we just saw a little bit earlier? Well, maybe you've noticed that it is much smaller, and that is true. Is it just the jaw that's smaller, or are the teeth smaller as well? Well, let's zoom in. So I'm going to go towards the bottom here, and let me see if I can focus so you can take a good look at their teeth. Let's see if we can get this. Now, these teeth are not only pretty tiny, but they also have quite an interesting shape. It's going to take a second to focus. Let's see if we can see some of those shapes. Now we can see it. There we go. So look at these shapes of these teeth. You may notice that there's almost like 3 points to them. Not only that, but how many teeth do you see? Probably too many to count right now, right? They have lots of teeth. Now, the other shark we saw earlier also had lots of teeth, but this one is even more. And that's because sharks are going to go through many teeth in their life. So unlike humans, where we have our baby teeth and then we have our grown-up teeth, sharks are going to constantly lose and build new teeth through their whole life. Now, that actually has to do with this stuff. Now, sharks, as well as their cousins, the rays, have a very special skeleton. So if you think about the skeleton of us humans, we have bones. And bones help us to do lots of stuff, right? Help us to move, to jump, to play. But for the skeleton of a shark, their bones are made of cartilage. So, cartilage. Give your nose a wiggle, or your ear even, and that is the same stuff that makes up a shark skeleton. So, it's much more bendable, and it's not as tough as a bone is. And so, if your jaw, like in this case, is made out of that stuff, well, it's going to be much easier for teeth to fall out. And because sharks are such great hunters, you're probably going to lose some teeth that way as well. But let's think about what this shark eats. Now, this jaw is from a zebra shark. Now, we actually saw a picture of it earlier. Maybe we can take a look at where its mouth is, and that might give us some more hints as to what this shark is eating, with a smaller mouth and much, much smaller teeth. Now, smaller mouth probably tells you that it's going to eat smaller things. But sometimes by looking at where the mouth is, that can give you some hints as to what it eats. because some sharks, like we saw a little bit earlier, like in the great white, have a mouth that faces forward. But a zebra shark, well, can you see its mouth? Not really. And that's because it's under here. The zebra shark's mouth is underneath its body. So what that tells you is that maybe it's going to eat a lot of its food down at the bottom. Here's a great picture where you can see it now. So that mouth on the bottom means that it can be great for finding prey that lives down at the bottom of the ocean. And because zebra sharks live a lot of times in these coral reefs, there's a lot of little critters to find. It could be small fish, it could be some clams, it could be shrimps or squid, but those tiny teeth are great for grabbing onto slippery things, right? Or it can also be used to crush things too, if there's something crunchy that it wants to eat, like a crab maybe. So, mouth where it is, and also the teeth can help you learn a lot. So, why don't we go even smaller with our teeth though? All right, can we get any smaller than that? Well, for this one, it's going to be a little bit tricky because I can't actually use my camera for this one. And that's because this next jaw looks like this. Whoa. So this jaw is huge. But I said that we were going tinier, that our teeth were getting smaller. And it is true. Even though our mouth is getting huge, the teeth have gotten smaller. And that's because this jaw belongs to this shark right here. Do you know what shark this is? I'll give you a hint. It's the biggest shark in the whole world. This is the whale shark. Now, like I said, even though it's huge, the teeth get smaller. Let's go to my camera and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to try my best to hold this giant jaw into the camera, but what you can see here, if we zoom in, and we will need to zoom in pretty far, is that they do still have some teeth, but they are very, very small. Now that's kind of strange. What could a shark eat if it has a gigantic mouth, but tiny, tiny teeth? Any guesses what this shark might be eating? Well, maybe we have some more pictures or videos we can look at of this very special shark, and we can see if we can get any hints as to what this might be, what this big shark might like to eat. The biggest shark in the world. Well, take a look. These things are gigantic. They're bigger than, in some cases, bigger than a school bus. They're huge. Now, not only can you see these same gills still on the side, but this big giant shark, the whale shark, as they swim along, and we saw in that picture, they'll keep their mouth wide open. And what that does is it's going to let the water pass through. But with no teeth, well, they're not going to be biting anything. Not really, no. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to catch all sorts of little plankton and krill and tiny fish. So even though they're gigantic and huge, their food is going to be really, really small. That's kind of strange, right? Now, this idea of big, big animals eating small, small things is not just for the whale shark. Because think of the things that they're named after. Whales, they do the same thing. Many of them are huge animals that eat small things. And in fact, even the biggest ray in the world, the manta ray, maybe we can have Tina show us a picture of a manta ray. Now, I mentioned that we were going to touch on the rays a little bit today, and even if we did too much, I figured we should take a look at them really quick. And the reason we're talking about rays, even if this is a shark program, is because sharks and rays have a lot in common. And one of the things is that, or the main thing, is that skeleton. So we talked about how they have that cartilage skeleton. Well, rays have that too. So what you can see as we look at these manta rays, which are huge rays, these biggest rays in the world, you'll see some things shared. That skeleton, you might also see those 5 gill slits, except for rays, it's on the bottom that you can see over here. But like I said, this idea of big animals eating small things is shared by this gigantic ray too. Because these manta rays, they do the same thing, where they swim with their mouth wide open, like this one here. And then, as water passes through and they're swimming around in the ocean, they can catch all sorts of small things. And so, big animals sometimes don't need to eat big things. Instead, their life is basically made of eating a ton of ocean crumbs. So, that's a little bit about some of these different types of teeth that sharks will have, and some can be quite surprising for what they eat, right? So let's go ahead and review what we learned today, my friends. So today, for our shark program, well, we explored a little bit about what makes a shark a shark. We talked about their different fins, their gills, the eyes that they have can be quite different on what they, depending on what kind of shark it is. But they're going to share some of these things, right? A lot of them, they'll all have these gills. They're all going to have some type of mouth, even though we now know that it's going to be very different, right? Like this amazing sand tiger shark here. But we now learned that there are some differences between sharks too, right? It could be things like their teeth. And the teeth and where their mouth is can also give you big hints on what these animals like to eat. Now, sharks are amazing. I hope that today you have gained a greater appreciation for these sharks because these animals need our help too. Sharks are very important animals to their ecosystem. They help make sure that there is a balance. And like I said, they can be found in almost every ocean habitat, and they're an important part in each one. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a great time exploring sharks. I had a great time with all of you. If you have any last minute questions, feel free to use that number or email down below, and we'll be sure to get back to you and answer any of your lingering shark questions. But thank you so much, friends, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.